Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We are so glad you're here with us.
It is great to be back.
Usually when we sit down to do one of these, we're looking at something. Well, something you can tell a story about. A broad cultural phenomenon, maybe a specific book or a historical event.
The soft stuff, you could say.
Exactly, the stories. But today, we're doing something physically different. We are zooming in, literally down to the atomic level on what might be the single most critical bottleneck in the entire modern world.
It sounds like hyperbole, doesn't it? But when you really look at it, it isn't.
Not at all.
If you just take a snapshot of the global economy right now, here in early 2026, you'll find that practically every single major industry funnels through this one very specific choke point.
We're talking about silicon. And not just, the Silicon Valley is this abstract concept. We are talking about the actual physical polished wafers of silicon that run your life. If you picked up a smartphone this morning, if you drove a modern car that has lane assist, or if you, and this is pretty much everyone now, have been integrating AI tools into your daily workflow, you are relying on the source material we are unpacking today.
It is the bedrock. It's the foundation for everything else. And we have a really fascinating primary source to guide us today. It's basically a roadmap for the immediate future of all technology.
What are we looking at?
We're looking at the detailed earnings and outlook call from TSMC, that's Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company, and it's dated January 2026.
So this is fresh. And this is the document that, in a way, dictates the speed limit for human progress for the next, 5 years?
That's a great way to put it. When TSMC speaks, the biggest companies on the planet, we're talking Apple, NVIDIA, AMD, even the car manufacturers, they all just stop and listen.
Because TSMC is the one who tells them what is physically possible.
Exactly. They aren't just giving financial guidance to Wall Street. They're telling us if this AI revolution is going to keep accelerating or if it's about to hit a physical wall. They're telling us if the internet is going to get faster or if it's just going to get more expensive.
Okay, so here's our mission for this deep dive. We're going to unpack the state of the semiconductor world as of right now, early 2026. We're absolutely going to look at this AI mega trend that everyone is shouting about, but we're going to look at it through the lens of the people actually building the hardware.
And we have to talk about the factories, the massive, massive factories popping up around the globe, from the deserts of Arizona to these terrifyingly precise clean rooms in Japan.
Oh, and we cannot forget the tech itself. I'm excited for this part. We're going to geek out a little bit on the sci-fi level engineering that's coming down the pipe. We're talking about things like superpower rail and 2-nanometer architecture.
We will definitely get there.
I just love that we finally get to talk about something called a superpower rail. It sounds like a weapon from a mecha anime or something.
It does, but it's actually all about the fundamental physics of electricity. We'll get to it. But first, I think we really need to set the scene.
Right. Let's do that. So the date is January 2026. The TSMC executives are on the call. The analysts from all the big banks are listening, with bated breath. What's the headline vibe here? Because looking at the numbers from the source, 2025 seemed like a pretty wild, almost schizophrenic year for the tech industry.
Schizophrenic is a strong word, but in terms of market behavior, it's actually pretty accurate. It was a year of really stark contrasts.
Okay.
If you look at the broad strokes, the transcript, 2025 was characterized by what TSMC calls, and I'm quoting here, robust AI-related demand. That was the engine. That was the only thing that mattered.
So if you were in the AI business.
If you were in the business of AI, so high-performance computing, the big chips running the data centers, 2025 was an absolute party. An absolute boom.
But the rest of the economy, the stuff normal people buy.
Not so much. The source material notes that everything else, so that's smartphones, PCs, the traditional consumer electronics, all of that saw only a mild recovery.
So not a crash, but not great.
Exactly. It wasn't a bust, but it certainly wasn't a boom. It was the kind of year where people held on to their old phones for just a little bit longer, but at the same time, corporations were buying AI chips as fast as they could possibly be printed.
Okay, so we've got this split reality. But despite that, TSMC posted numbers that are, well, they're frankly difficult to get your head around for a manufacturing business. Let's unpack that growth, because there's a specific term they use that I think we need to define for everyone. They keep talking about Foundry 2.0.
Right, Foundry 2.0. This is crucial to understanding the whole picture.
When I first saw that in the notes, my first thought was, okay, is this just corporate marketing speak? Are they just rebranding to make themselves sound cooler? But they're actually redefining the boundaries of their entire industry, aren't they?
They are. And to understand why, you have to understand what a foundry used to be. Historically, a foundry did one thing. They took a raw silicon wafer, they used incredibly precise light to print circuits on it, and then they sent it out the door.
That was the business model. Make the wafer, sell the wafer.
Simple. But chips aren't simple anymore, not by a long shot.
Right.
As Moore's law has slowed down, as it's gotten physically harder and more expensive to just shrink the transistors, we've had to get a lot more creative. You can't just rely on the printing anymore. You have to start stacking chips on top of each other.
You mean physically stacking them?
Physically. You have to connect them in 3D space. You have to wrap them in these incredibly complex casings to manage the heat and the speed. And that whole process is called packaging.
And packaging used to be the boring part, right? It was like putting the cardboard box around the product. Now it seems like the packaging is almost as important as the product itself.
Precisely. The box is now part of the engine. So, Foundry 2.0, as TSMC defines it in this source, it includes the traditional logic wafer manufacturing, but it also includes the advanced packaging, the testing, the mask making, basically the entire ecosystem required to build a modern AI brain from start to finish.
So they've expanded the definition of their sandbox to include everything.
And here's the data point that just jumps off the page when you look at it through that lens. The Foundry 2.0 industry, so the whole pie, as they define it, grew 16% year over year in 2025.
Okay, 16% is a very, very respectable number for a mature global industry like this.
It's very healthy growth. But TSMC, their revenue increased 35.9% in US dollar terms.
Wait, hold on. Let me just process that. The entire industry grows by 16%.
Yep.
But TSMC, just one company in that industry, grows by almost 36%.
Correct.
So they're growing at more than double the rate of the entire market they operate in.
That is a massive delta. In a market as competitive as semiconductors, you usually fight tooth and nail for a single percentage point here or there. To outpace the industry growth by nearly 20 percentage points, it means you are effectively eating everyone else's lunch.
It has to.
It implies that while the pie is getting bigger, TSMC is taking a much, much larger slice of that pie every single quarter.
It suggests they have a monopoly on the stuff that actually matters.
It suggests they have a monopoly on the high end. And that's the key distinction. If you need a simple chip for a toaster or a basic microcontroller for a washing machine, you can go to other foundries. There are plenty of players for that.
Sure.
But if you need a chip to run a large language model that simulates a human brain, if you need the absolute bleeding edge of what is physically possible, you really only have one phone number to call.
And looking forward into 2026, it's not like they're slowing down. The forecast from the source is for the industry to grow another 14%, but TSMC again says, and I'm quoting, "We expect to outperform."
And it's not just a one-year bump they're talking about. They are forecasting a revenue increase of close to 30% CAGR, that's compound annual growth rate, over a 4-year period.
Okay, let's pause on that for a second. 30% growth every year for 4 years straight.
For a hardware manufacturing company of this size, that is, it's just staggering. Software companies dream of that kind of growth, but software is easy to scale. You just copy the code.
Right.
TSMC has to build physical factories. They have to pour concrete, install machines that weigh tons and cost hundreds of millions of dollars apiece. To grow that physical infrastructure at 30% annually, it just speaks to a structural shift in demand that is unlike anything we have seen since maybe the initial rollout of the internet itself.
But it's not all just blue skies and hockey stick growth, right? I noticed a little note in the source about uncertainties. They explicitly mentioned tariff policies and rising component costs.
They did. And that's the reality of the geopolitical landscape in 2026. You can't ignore it. They mentioned that these risks are specifically potent for, in their words, consumer-related and price-sensitive market segments.
So basically, the stuff we buy.
Your budget smartphone, your laptop. If tariffs go up or electricity costs rise or material costs increase, those low-margin products get squeezed first. You might see prices rise at Best Buy.
Enough for the big stuff.
But the high-end enterprise AI stuff, that demand is so strong, so inelastic, that it seems to be powering right through those headwinds. Microsoft and Google aren't going to stop building data centers because the chips got 5% more expensive due to a tariff. They can't afford to.
Which brings us to the star of the show. The reason TSMC is growing at 30% a year. The AI megatrend.
They use that exact phrase in the call, AI megatrend.
It feels like every company in the world tries to use that phrase to boost their stock price.
Yeah.
But TSMC actually has the receipts. Let's look at the revenue breakdown. How much of their business is actually this AI stuff?
This is where you can really see the shot happening in real time. They categorize it as AI accelerators. So, just to be clear, we aren't talking about the CPU in your laptop here. We are talking about the big, powerful GPUs and specialized processors from companies like NVIDIA, AMD, and the custom silicon from the cloud giants.
The real heavy-duty hardware.
Exactly. And in 2025, revenue from these AI accelerators accounted for a high teens percentage of their total revenue.
High teens, so what, 17, 18, maybe 19%? Nearly a fifth of their entire business is just these massive AI brains.
And that number is climbing fast, unbelievably fast. They actually raised their forecast on this call. They now expect their AI accelerator revenue to grow at a mid to high 50% CGR for the 5-year period from 2024 to 2029.
Hold on, say that again. Mid to high 50%.
Mid to high 50% growth, compounded, every year, for 5 years.
That is exponential. It's a doubling and redoubling of demand over and over. It implies that by, 2028 or 2029, TSMC is going to look less like a general chip company and more like an AI infrastructure company that just happens to make some phone chips on the side.
That's a very accurate way to see it. The center of gravity is shifting.
And where is all this demand coming from? Is it just people making better chatbots?
No, it's broader than that. They list 3 main pillars: consumer AI, enterprise AI, and a new one they call sovereign AI.
Sovereign AI.
Yeah.
I love that term. It sounds so intense.
It is intense, and it's a huge new source of demand. It's the realization by national governments that artificial intelligence is a strategic asset. It's the new nuclear capability. It's the new oil reserve.
So countries are waking up to the fact that they can't be dependent.
Right. They're realizing they cannot rely on a foreign power, or for that matter, even a foreign corporation, to host their national intelligence, their critical infrastructure AI.
So France wants a French AI model built on French data. Japan wants a Japanese model.
Exactly. And to have a sovereign model, you need sovereign compute. You need your own supercomputers on your own soil, running on your own power grid under your own laws. And that creates this entirely new layer of demand that isn't sensitive to consumer trends at all. Governments buy differently than teenagers buying iPhones.
There was one insight in the source that really blew my mind, and it's about how business is actually done now. They talked about customers.
Yes, this is a fascinating structural change. It's a complete disruption of the traditional food chain in the tech industry.
So normally, TSMC sits at the bottom of that chain.
Right.
They make the physical chip. They sell it to a designer like NVIDIA.
Right.
NVIDIA sells it to a server maker like Dell or Supermicro. And then Dell sells the whole server to Amazon or Google. It's a line.
That's the linear chain we're all used to. But the source material highlights that the customers, specifically the cloud service providers, the so-called hyperscalers like AWS, Azure, Google Cloud, are now reaching out directly to TSMC.
So the cloud giants are skipping the line. Or at least, they're walking past the front of the restaurant, going straight into the kitchen to talk to the chef.
That's a perfect analogy. They are knocking on the kitchen door and saying, look, we know NVIDIA is placing the official order, but we are here to tell you we need to make sure you actually have the stove space to cook our meal 3 years from now. They are requesting capacity directly from the source.
Why do they feel the need to do that? Why not just trust the supply chain to work?
Because the stakes have become too high. If you are Google or Microsoft and you run out of compute capacity in 2027, you lose the AI race, period. It's an existential threat. You cannot afford to be left without silicon.
So it's about certainty.
It's about securing their future. They are bypassing the layers to get silicon certainty. They want to look TSMC in the eye and hear them say, yes, we will build a factory for you.
And that leads directly to the timeline shift. The source says engagement time with customers is now at least 2 to 3 years in advance.
Right, because the process technology is so complex now and the demand is so high, you can't just call up and put in an order for next quarter. It's not like ordering office supplies. If you want state-of-the-art AI chips delivered in 2029, you're having those conversations with TSMC right now in 2026.
That forces the entire industry to plan incredibly long-term. You have to have an immense amount of conviction in your roadmap to make those kinds of bets.
It does. And it removes the ability to be nimble in some ways. You are committed to a specific hardware trajectory years and years in advance. TSMC says they view this semiconductor demand as very fundamental to the global economy. They don't see this as a bubble. To them, it's the new electricity.
So if everyone needs these chips, and they need them years in advance, where are they actually getting made? This brings us to the global footprint section. TSMC is basically playing a real-life game of civilization. building these enormous factories all over the world.
It is a massive, unprecedented expansion strategy, and the source makes it very clear this is a dual strategy. They are aggressively expanding their global footprint while also continuing to invest very heavily in their home base in Taiwan.
Let's start with Arizona. This has been in the news for years, and often for negative reasons. We heard about delays, culture clashes, labor shortages. But looking at this 2026 update, it really seems like that narrative has flipped.
It really has. The update on this call is surprisingly, almost shockingly bullish. Fab 1 in Arizona, the first big factory there, successfully entered high-volume production in the fourth quarter of 2024.
So as we speak, it's working. Chips are flowing out of the Arizona desert.
The factory is alive and producing.
Yep.
And Fab 2, the construction on that one is complete. The tools, the massive machines are being moved in throughout 2026. But here is the real nugget, the detail that tells you everything you need to know about the demand situation.
What's that?
The production schedule was pulled forward.
Pulled forward. In the world of construction, especially for something as insanely complex as a semiconductor fab, you never hear that phrase.
Never.
It's always delayed due to unforeseen complexity or pushed back pending review.
It is incredibly rare. To pull a schedule forward on a multi-billion-dollar project like this means you are moving heaven and earth. They pulled it forward to the second half of 2027 specifically because of strong demand from their U.S. customers.
So the American tech giants want their chips made in America.
And they want them yesterday. But TSMC isn't stopping there. The source says Fab 3 construction has already started, and they are already in the process of applying for permits for a fourth fab.
4 fabs. That's not just a factory anymore. That's a small city dedicated to making chips.
It is. And get this, they also mentioned purchasing a second, very large piece of land nearby. The phrase they use to describe this grand vision is striking. They want to create an independent data cluster.
Independent data cluster. I circled that 3 times in my notes. What does that actually mean in practice? What is that?
It means creating a completely self-sufficient ecosystem. Right now, the semiconductor supply chain is very fragmented, very global. A wafer might be made in Taiwan, sent to Malaysia for packaging, then sent to China for final assembly and testing. It's a logistical nightmare and, as we've seen, a major geopolitical risk.
So an independent cluster means?
It means doing it all in one zip code. Wafer manufacturing, the advanced packaging we talked about, the testing, the entire process. The idea is that raw silicon comes in one side of this Arizona campus, and a finished, packaged, high-performance AI processor goes out the other side without ever having to leave the United States.
That is the holy grail for supply chain security. It's like a fortress of silicon.
It is, and they say it will support smartphone chips, AI chips, and high-performance computing HPC, all within that single hub. It fundamentally changes the physical geography of the internet.
What about the rest of the world? I know they're building in Japan and Europe as well.
Japan is the efficiency champion in this story. The source notes that their Kumamoto Fab 1 started volume production in late 2024 with very good yield.
It's very good yield. Now, that sounds like a polite compliment, but in the chip world, that's a massive deal, isn't it?
It's huge. Yield is everything. It's the percentage of chips on each wafer that actually worked perfectly. For a brand new fab in a new country to have high yields almost immediately, it suggests that the partnership with Sony and the Japanese government is working absolutely seamlessly. And, no surprise, Fab 2 construction has already started there.
And Europe, how's that going?
Europe is moving, but it's a different flavor of project. They confirm they have the commitment from the European Commission and the German government, but the focus there is on a specialty fab.
Which means chips for cars, basically.
Exactly, automotive and industrial. Germany needs chips from Mercedes, BMW, Siemens. They aren't trying to build the next ChatGPT training cluster in Dresden. They're trying to secure the supply chain to keep their industrial base running. So you have Arizona for AI, Japan for image sensors and logic, and Germany for industry.
But through all of this, Taiwan remains the mothership.
Absolutely. The core, as they call it. They are preparing multiple phases of their most advanced 2-nanometer fabs in the Hsinchu and Kaohsiung science parks. The absolute leading edge, the riskiest, newest, most valuable technology, it always starts in Taiwan. And only once they perfect the recipe there do they export it to the other fabs around the world.
Okay, let's get into the nerdy stuff, the technology itself. Because all these amazing factories are useless if the technology inside isn't progressing. The source talks a lot about N2 and A16.
This is the horizon. This is the tech that will power the next generation of everything, but especially AI. So N2 is their 2-nanometer technology node.
2 nanometers. I honestly can't even conceptualize how small that is.
Well, for context, a single strand of human DNA is about 2.5 nanometers wide.
So we're talking about building transistors machines with moving parts, essentially, that are smaller than the basic building blocks of life.
It's mind-bending stuff, and according to this source, this N2 tech successfully enters high-volume production in the fourth quarter of 2025.
So it's happening right now, basically.
It is, but the really important note in the call is about the ramp-up. They expect a much faster ramp in 2026 for N2 than for previous generations, and that's because the demand from smartphone makers, and especially HPC AI applications, is just so high. Usually, a new node starts slow, it's very expensive. N2 is going to start fast.
And there's a variant of it called N2P.
Right. N2P, it's an extension of the N2 family. Think of it like an enhanced version. It brings further performance and power benefits. Production for that is scheduled for the second half of 2026. It's this relentless tick-tock of constant improvement.
But the thing that really caught my eye, and the thing I really want you to explain, is A16, and specifically this thing called superpower rail.
Yes. A16. This is the next big architectural leap after the N2 family.
Superpower rail. It still sounds like a special move in video game. I'm charging my superpower rail.
It does sound awesome, doesn't it? But it solves a very boring but incredibly critical problem, physics. A16 is a technology that features this superpower rail, or SPR.
Okay, unpack this for us. Why do we suddenly need a superpower rail? What problem is it solving that we didn't have before?
Okay, so imagine a modern chip is like a bustling, incredibly dense city. You have billions and billions of buildings. Those are the transistors. And just like a building in a real city, every single transistor needs two things to function. It needs people coming in and out, and that's the data signal.
Okay.
And it needs electricity to keep the lights on, and that's the power.
Right. City, buildings, people, and power. I'm with you.
In traditional chips, for decades, the roads for the people, the data, and the power lines for the electricity have all been built on the same level, sort of layered on top of the buildings. As the city gets denser and denser, as we pack more and more transistors and the streets get hopelessly gridlocked.
A traffic jam.
An electromagnetic traffic jam. You have power lines interfering with data roads. The power has to travel through this confusing maze of tiny wires to get to the transistor, and it loses energy along the way. It generates heat. It creates electrical noise. It's a mess.
And that's the bottleneck.
That is the new bottleneck. Superpower rail moves the entire power delivery network to the backside of the silicon wafer. It completely separates the power network from the signal network.
So they're essentially digging a subway system just for the electricity.
That is the perfect analogy. They are putting the entire power grid underground, directly connecting to the bottom of the transistors. And this leaves the surface streets completely wide open, just for the data signals to run faster and take more complex routes without any interference.
Wow. So it completely clears up the traffic jam on the surface.
It creates a dedicated, super efficient highway for energy. And the source says this is best suited for HPC products, high-performance computing. These are the big AI chips that run incredibly hot and need massive amounts of clean, stable power. If you can deliver that power more efficiently, the chip runs cooler and much, much faster.
So A16 isn't just about making the transistor smaller. It's about completely rewiring the fundamental architecture of the chip itself.
Correct. It's a structural innovation, not just a shrinking innovation. And this is key. Volume production for A16 is on track for the second half of 2026. This is the technology that will almost certainly power the GPT-6s and GPT-7s of the world.
That is just incredible. And it really highlights why TSMC is winning so decisively.
Yeah.
They aren't just turning a crank faster, they are reinventing the machine. They also mentioned something about capacity converting N5 tools to support N3. What does that mean?
Yeah. That's a detail for the manufacturing geeks, but it's actually really important. It shows their flexibility. They have all these existing very expensive tools for their 5-nanometer node. As demand shifts to the newer 3-nanometer node, they've figured out how to retrofit and convert those older production lines.
So they don't have to start from scratch.
Right. It's an internal strategy to maximize support across all their nodes so they aren't left with billions of dollars of idle machines while customers are screaming for the newer stuff. It just shows that they are incredibly agile despite being this massive, massive company.
Okay, so let's zoom out for a minute. We've looked at the numbers. Foundry 2.0 growing, TSMC growing way faster. We've looked at the AI mega trend, 50+% growth rates, the cloud giant going direct to the source. We've looked at the physical factories reshaping Arizona and Japan, and we've looked at the mind-bending tech of 2-nanometer and superpower rail.
It's a comprehensive picture of dominance. There's no other word for it.
But I want to bring this back to the listener. If I'm just a person sitting at my desk, using a laptop, or maybe asking an AI to help me write an email, why should I care about TSMC's 2026 capital expenditure plan? Why does superpower rail matter to my daily life?
You should care because the speed and the capability of every digital tool available to you are directly throttled or unleashed by what we just discussed. We talk a lot about the idea of software eating the world, but we forget that software runs on hardware.
Right. You can write the smartest code in the universe, but if the chip can't run it fast enough, it's useless.
Exactly. The really powerful AI agents that people dream about, the ones that can actually run your company disease in seconds from a scan or design a new life-saving drug, all of those incredible software possibilities are currently bottlenecked by hardware availability and power efficiency.
So if TSMC hits these targets,
If N2 ramps up as fast as they say, if A16 and superpower rail really work, then that bottleneck opens up significantly.
it's the difference between a chatbot that can write a funny limerick and an AI agent that can actually do real productive work in the world.
Precisely. The so what here is that the absolute ceiling of human technological capability is being physically raised by these specific manufacturing decisions made in Taiwan. And there's a secondary so what, too, which is about the economy. We are witnessing this fundamental shift where computing power is being bought and sold with timelines stretching years into the future. It's becoming a utility, just like water or electricity.
And the geography of that utility is changing. It's not just made in Taiwan anymore. It's now made in Arizona, made in Kumamoto.
Which brings resilience to the supply chain, but it also brings a lot of new complexity. It means the physical infrastructure of the internet is becoming more distributed, but also, in a way, more nationalized.
I want to leave our listeners with a final thought, and it's about that Arizona project. The source called it an independent data cluster.
That phrase really stuck with me, too. It feels incredibly significant.
If the physical infrastructure of AI is becoming this massive and this localized, where you have the chip manufacturing, the packaging, and very likely the data centers all sitting in one specific zip code in the middle of the desert, what does that actually imply for the future of the internet?
It raises a really important question about data sovereignty and the physical nature of the cloud itself.
Exactly. We all think of the cloud as this ethereal thing that just floats everywhere and nowhere at once.
Yeah.
But is the cloud becoming grounded? If you're a European company or an Asian company, do you really want all your most sensitive data living in an independent cluster in Arizona, which is under U.S. jurisdiction? Or do you need your own cluster in Germany or Japan?
It strongly suggests that the internet might begin to fragment, not just politically with firewalls, but physically. We might see the rise of these data fortresses, where the silicon and the software are inextricably linked in specific geographic locations. You might have the American AI stack and the European AI stack physically separated by oceans and by their own unique silicon supply chains.
It's a fascinating, maybe a slightly terrifying, but mostly just an exciting future, a world of these powerful Silicon City states. And the craziest part is it's all being built, wafer by wafer, right now in 2026.
And we'll be here to track it. We'll have to see if the superpower rail really delivers on its promise.
Absolutely. That's it for this deep dive into the silicon backbone. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you on the next one.